So we're going to talk about firefighter cancer prevention and clean gear today. The objective of really is to talk about some of the research that's being done within the fields regarding firefighter cancer risks. We're going to talk about workplace safety standards, uh, how we can implement those, what some of those ideas are, and then we're going to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities within Georgia, but within all fire departments across the country, I would assume. As you can see from this slide, we're averaging about 66 deaths per year from 2015 to 2017. You know, heart attacks leading the way at 44%, trauma more than likely within fire situations, 27%, motor vehicle collisions, probably in emergency response, 20 to 25, and then asphyxiation or burns, 20%. And again, we'll talk about deaths related to cancer, and that's a much longer term situation. So all those things, these items are pretty immediate, whereas cancer situations are, again, much longer term. In the scope of the cancer problem in the fire, cancer is one of the most dangerous threats to health and safety of the firefighters everywhere. Multiple studies have proven the link in firefighter cancer. We're going to talk about several of those particular studies. I'm going to read some of these quotes. Pinpointing the exact cause of cancer is extremely difficult because firefighters are not exposed to just one agent. They are exposed to multiple cancer-causing agents. Because of the multiple exposures and multiple routes of exposures, they inhale carcinogens, and carcinogens are absorbed through the skin. It is also highly likely for firefighters to get only one type of cancer. It's highly unlikely for firefighters to get only one type of cancer. And this is from Grace Masters, PhD, Department of Environmental Health from the University of Cincinnati, who's conducted some of these studies. Some of the studies that have found that there was an increased rate of cancer in different parts of the body or different types of cancer. So testicular cancer is almost 2 times greater risk. You have other cancers that are ranging between 1.5 times, all the way down to leukemia at 1.14 times a greater risk. So all these cancers suggest that there is a higher likelihood of cancer within firefighting. The NIOSH study showed higher rates of digestive, oral, respiratory, and urinary cancer than general population. They also nearly twice as many cases of malignant mesothelioma, a rare type of cancer triggered by asbestos exposures. I think you guys have seen a lot of those commercials related mesothelioma regarding people working in shipyards or related to asbestos and other materials to that effect. They're seeing a higher rate that just because of the exposure within buildings and other things that firefighters are going into. 2 routes of exposure. You have the lungs and your dermal absorption. The lungs, with any airborne toxin, not using respiratory gear or removing it too soon will increase your exposure. And again, both of those, whether you're not wearing it at all or whether you're not wearing it soon enough or after the fire while you're still being exposed. And then again, historically, I think firefighters take pride in the fact that they're dirty and they've gotten dirty. And then again, I think that's something that a lot of people within jobs that are dirty jobs, they take pride that they're dirtier. But the problem is that soot, that those other things penetrate and expose, penetrate the gear and are absorbed into your body. There's different types of routes of exposure. So from an absorption perspective, you see that different parts of the body have a more of an increase or more of a higher degree of absorption. So you have the groin area, might be related to the testicular cancer, 300%. You got the jaw angle and forehead angle and scalp. There are higher levels of absorption there. And again, you look at your forehead and scalp and back, those are probably areas where you're more likely to get exposure in those particular areas. The permeability increases with temperature. So the higher increase in temperature, the more likely absorption is to occur. And again, as you know, firefighters are increasing their body heat and body temperature from all the work they're doing, putting out those fires. Routes of exposure, most pieces of PPE are in the hood are designed to protect the head and neck from heat. They're not necessarily designed to stop absorption. They've done a lot of different tests on these from a liquid perspective, and they don't stop really anything from a absorption perspective. Along with the combined sweat, it just draws those things into your skin. So that's where a lot of the issue is. Some pictures of the routes of absorption. This really shows the black light after a test exposure on inert substances. In real life, these are the areas where soot and other toxins tend to collect. So you can see with your neck and around your ears and in those particular areas. Again, reading this quote, some cancer studies are also noting that firefighters are developing far more aggressive types of cancer, such as brain cancer, at the young age than general population, which provides further indication that the cancer could be a result of firefighting. Again, more proof that exposures of the firefighter do increase their chance of taking on some of these deadly diseases. This is a study that was made within the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department. They had 32% of their firefighters, over 2,000, were diagnosed with some form of cancer. That's basically a third of every firefighter. And again, some of the cancers that they found were male prostate, testicular, melanomas of the skin, brain, nervous system, head, neck, all different things. Again, the female had different type of cancers related to that. Soot particles are really the issue, and we're going to talk about where they're coming from, or maybe potentially where the concern is. But it was first reported from occupational cancer attributed to exposure to soot. Prolonged exposure to soot on the skin is a hazard. Soot particles absorb hazardous vapors and hold them in place and surfaces, including firefighters' clothing and skin. Again, if you have soot on your skin for a prolonged basis, it's going to eventually absorb in there. They're saying that not only firefighters, but during school demonstrations where you're demonstrating fire and other things, that might be a potential for exposure. And I'm not going to read through this quote. I'll let you kind of read through it yourselves. Again, if not removed, contaminated exterior surfaces, inner layer of the firefighter's PPE can result in exposure well after the fire. And again, the most likely place that's going to be contaminated under the neck. You can even take it home to your family, and again, in a home and other exposures, demonstrations at school, any place where this soot will be contaminated. So getting it out, not bringing it into your home is important. We'll talk about other controls a little bit later. Modern day construction, there are massive amount of chemicals within plastics, within other materials, siding that are used. And these, when melted a high heat, they produce a lot of hazardous vapors that will collect within that soot and other material. So again, compared to previous firefighters, where they were mostly fighting fires with brick and wood and kind of metal materials, modern day home manufacturing or home building and commercial building really increases your likelihood to be exposed to these hazardous chemicals. Again, even fires within vehicles or dumpster fires, it's really unknown the amount of exposure to these hazardous or toxic chemicals. So any of these things, we're not really aware of those, of what's in there, or even within a vehicle, the seat materials, interior materials, some of the plastic materials are all potentially could be toxic. The characterization of firefighting exposed during fire overhaul. Today's synthetic or plastic households present a risk to firefighters even after the fire is out. Smoldering materials released from chemicals that firefighters continue to breathe. Items of turnout gear absorbed through these materials all can cause some type of later exposure after the fire is out. Again, the overhaul process, soot particles, and even diesel engine exhaust. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. The diesel engines that you're driving, that exhaust can be linked to some type of, is a toxic substance and can be linked to some type of cause of cancer. This is a study that they took on within the and exposure has increased for lung cancer, other type of cancers, bladder cancers, leukemia. Really the expectation is the emissions should be dispersed up to 650 feet outside of the inhabitants' residence. Again, if you have diesel exhaust in a fire station, your walls and furniture is all going to be contaminated with those particles. They'll also, if you're storing your gear within in your main hall where the truck is being located, and you're running those diesel vapors, those will contaminate your bunker gear and your turnout gear, and will cause more risk of cancer-related issues. Again, actions you should take to protect yourself. Oftentimes, the steps that the firefighter can take to protect themselves from exposure to carcinogens are simple and easily accomplished. By understanding these common exposures to cancer-causing agents, firefighters can take the necessary steps to keep themselves safe and healthy. So, really, decon is a big deal, and the studies have shown that air blown is not very effective. Dry brush is not extremely effective, only 23% effective, but the combination of water and a brush to get sprayed down and use a brush can usually help eliminate 85% of contamination. So the expectation after that fire, if you've exposed to that soot and your uniform is saturated with that soot, is to have a decon set up where you're rinsing your fellow firefighters off and brushing them down, because the just the water pressure does not work. You need to use a brush to ensure that you're getting cleaner. And again, it's extremely important that for the health of your gear, but more important for the health of you, that that gear is clean and decontaminated. What else can you do? And we'll talk about these, but really ensuring that you have a clean place to store your gear, and it's separate from your living quarters, and then it's also separated from the engines. So again, that's something that we're looking for, that you're not storing your gear and boots within your living quarters, because that's going to cause contamination, potential carcinogenic toxins you could be exposed to in that area. Using specially designed washers to clean your exposed clothes, and also, so after the decon, you'd bring those clothes back to your particular department, and you use these specially designed washers. I know within both GMA and ACCG, we have awarded people grants. If you're a member of our workers' compensation, either GMA and or ACCG, and we have paid for washers that are $3,000 to $4,000 to help clean these particular uniforms. They're designed specifically for firefighter gear. So this is something that we can get for you, and we feel is very important to help firefighters out. Again, making sure that your gear is clean on site, that your respirators are clean and readily accessible, that if you're exposed, that your skin, use wet wipes to clean those areas that are exposed, that show signs of soot. So your face and your neck and the back of your neck, your arms and your hands, any place with high potential exposure areas, clean on site for those. And then if you had contaminated uniforms, that you're putting those in plastic bags until you can get those to your facility to have them washed with those special washers. Again, really important, ensuring that you're wearing SCBAs during the incident and overhaul. Before you get exposed, before you're exposed to that soot, make sure you have your respirator on. And then when you're doing the overhaul, make sure you have it on. Whenever possible, work behind the nozzle spray when extinguishing the fire. Work to remove exhaust from engines in the bay. So having exhaust hoses that are going outside so that they're not brought back into the building. Isolate living and working spaces from vehicle exhaust. And again, you should isolate those working areas from also any type of gear. Be aware of the exhaust from apparatuses at the fire scene. And again, make sure your gear is outside of the sleeping areas and any type of non-inhabitable areas or inhabitable areas. Reduce the exposures to your skin. Perform gross decontamination at the scene. So again, wash yourself down with a brush. Make sure you're clean. Shower as soon as possible. But before that, make sure you're using wet wipes to remove any soot from your face and any other exposed area. Ensure the turnout gear is properly laundered after exposure. And again, I know that's not always the easiest thing to do. A lot of you don't have those units, but as we've talked about earlier, that we do have grants and we can help you out with those from a workers' compensation perspective. Again, really important to look beyond just exposures from a firefighter perspective. Stop using tobacco products. Lung cancer and other things are high exposures for those. So make sure you're keeping a healthy lifestyle. Eat plenty of fruits and vegetables. I read a recent study that sugars are considered carcinogenic. So any type of sugars in it, and again, it really goes back to obesity. Anyone defined as obese, which is pretty amazing that it doesn't take much to be obese anymore. You're at a higher risk for cancer if you are diagnosed with obesity. Again, limit processed meat because all the chemicals within those meats and preservatives. Maintain a healthy life or healthy weight and be physically active. And again, I think firefighters do a pretty good job of that, but ensuring that you're working out using cardio to ensure you're keeping your heart rate up a certain period of time a week. Use sunscreen and avoid being exposed to the sun, and make sure you get regular medical care. I would recommend that everyone get an annual checkup, and if you're a sun worshiper, you should probably see the dermatologist on an annual basis. The challenge is really within most of Georgia is, the rural fire departments and even our smaller fire departments, it's the resource level. We have a challenge. They don't have necessarily the resources to make a lot of these recommendations. And what we say, if you can, do what you can. And if you need additional resources, let us know. We'll see what we can do. But we do have grants available. We can help purchase laundry machines, but we can also do items to help with exhaust. We can do things with storage. Let us know how we can help you out. But there's it's ultimately, I think, one of the big challenges, a cultural change is, and I'm not a firefighter, and I'll never be blessed to know that culture. But I think, like many cultures, it's kind of what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. That's not necessarily the case with these toxins. I think prolonged exposure to these toxins are going to cause long-term issues and potentially cancer. So we really want to make sure you and your fellow firefighters are very aware of this situation. Again, opportunities, train all new firefighters from the beginning of the career. So if you have new people coming in, make sure they're aware of this. Make sure they're following these best case practices, that they're not taking their turnout gear home, that they're deconning after the fire, that they're making sure they're not being exposed to these diesel exhausts. New builds can incorporate segregated design. Simple guidelines or SOP make big results. And again, if you need SOPs, let us know. We can assist you with those. It's really not a Georgia problem. It's really a nationwide issue. Everybody has the same issues. This is a major problem. We need to help you guys with this. In summary, all calls should be considered a hazmat call, so make sure you're wearing your proper personal protective equipment, and if needed, your SCBAs. Wash gear on the fire ground. Make sure it's cleaned and decon there. Use wipes on the grounds, but shower as soon as possible. Exposures happen anywhere on the fire ground. Contaminated gear continue to gas off and be hazardous. Reducing exposure starts with prevention. Training and education is the key. And again, my knowledge of this is limited basically to what I've talked about today. We have other videos online. I believe we've had a couple of different firefighters provide this information, and you can find that on our website. Be more than happy if you send me an email. I'll actually send you a link with that when I send this out. He did a much better job of presenting this than I did today, but I would like to thank each and every one of you for participating, and I will be sending this out along with recording of the other presentation. So if you have any questions after viewing any of these things, please don't hesitate to send me a question back. If I don't know the answer, I'll search out and identify some people, and we'll find you that answer. So thank you guys so very much, and I hope everybody has a great day.